Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast. I've been talking about Kieslowski's Dekalog series, going through it episode by episode. Today, I'm going to talk about Dekalog 7. I've talked about this sort of idea with this series that I'm picking up, and I'm genuinely doing these reviews as I watch them. So I got ahead of myself a couple of times, but for the most part, I'm watching them and then doing these reviews. So in some cases, I don't really know what the next one is or the next few. So I'm trying to do it as it's being revealed to me what the series is about. It's very interesting to kind of slowly realize through the course of such a long, 10 episodes of what seems in some ways to be a single work, a feature of a 10-hour film. In some ways, even though it's episodic, it seems to have a theme to it about judgment and ethics and those things. Like I've said this before, evidently it is based on the Ten Commandments in a way that's not obvious. It's not, I don't get the feeling that this is a religious film, but I think that he was using the Ten Commandments as sort of a basis for exploring how we feel about these ethical issues, some dilemmas and paradoxes and things like that. And the idea for this one, I believe, is thou shalt not steal. That's what I've read in a few sources. And the story is about a young woman who lives with her mom and dad and her little sister. And you gradually realize in the story that the young woman, who is, I guess, maybe 20 something, is actually the mother of her little sister, and that there was a scandal. She was raped by someone when she was a minor, by this man that seduced her, who had been, what I gather from the story, who had been sort of a friend of her mother's, which creates some strangeness in the story. But this young woman, you get the feeling that she is just so frustrated and filled with resentment towards her mother, who has been claiming to be the mother of her daughter. She's been playing the part of big sister, and all along she's feeling these feelings of like, I want to be my child's mother as she got older. But it's almost at that point too late to reveal the truth, and I guess the scandal would have been too much for them. That kind of the stigma, of the scandal thing. So anyway, the story basically is about this young woman kidnapping her own daughter, which they address in the story at one point. It's like, is it wrong to kidnap your own daughter? She is my daughter, and I want to raise her as my daughter. And she doesn't like the way her mother is raising her daughter, and she's filled with all this resentment, and you can really sense the fact that she's really frustrated with her mom, and her mom is pretty overbearing about it. And so anyway, during a school play, she finds her daughter on the stage and kidnaps her, and is basically like, let's play a trick on mommy. And so they go off, and eventually she tells her daughter, her little girl, who I believe is maybe 6 years old, tells her, I have something to tell you. I am your mommy. It's this kind of a harrowing scene for the little girl. You wonder, though, with children, what that kind of a revelation, if it would have the same profound impact that it would on an older person. Kids are so resilient, and they can sort of, whatever comes along, they're like, okay, that's the way things are now. So you get the impression that the little girl is not traumatized by this new information. And in fact, at one point, she's saying, she calls her by her first name. She calls her mother by her first name, the way she's done her whole life, thinking that they're sisters. And the young woman says, "Call me mommy, call me mommy," and the girl just keeps repeating her name. Like, it's too late for that. She couldn't make that quite, she couldn't quite go there, to change her thoughts so radically about her sister to the point where she would now start calling her sister mommy. It's pretty interesting, the dynamics between her and the girl, and she eventually takes her daughter to the home of the man who is the girl's father, and he is very uncomfortable, and I believe you can kind of get the impression that he thinks, he asks her right away, "What do you want?" And he's thinking that she has come around to try to get some money, or to some reason, like maybe she would blackmail him or whatever. But he ends up sort of looking at the little girl and liking her, and he tries to help her evade the grandparents, her parents, who are looking for the girl, the young girl. It's so complicated. And eventually they catch up with her, and there's another sort of spoiler. They catch up with her, and at the very end, they're at the train station, and they come in, and the little girl is just waking up, and she's like, oh, she's happy to see this woman and man who she's thought of as her mom and dad, and she goes to him, and the younger girl, the actual mother of the girl, the young woman, gets on the train and leaves, and you see her in the window of the train, and then at the very end, the little girl sort of runs after the train, and you're thinking, is she even thinking, that's my mommy going away on the train, leaving me? Or is it just, oh, it's my sister going away somewhere, bye, And so there's all these little questions in there about how important such a thing seems to a child. Maybe is it it wasn't to her, it wasn't this profound thing that a mother would feel towards her own child, wanting to raise her and the way she wants to raise her, and being frustrated by watching her mother raise her wrong. Don't do that, do this. And the little girl is shown as having nightmares. She has these nightmare dreams, and the actual grandmother claims, like, this is the way you calm her down. I can do it. Let me do it. And it's that kind of a thing, that kind of dynamic where I know more about raising children than you do, and all this. And the younger woman is unable to contest it because she is just the sister, right? So anyway, it's an interesting story. It's a very it's not quite as convoluted as far as the ethical questions as some of the other episodes, because this one is simply a mother. I mean, not simply, but this is the basic story is fairly straightforward. She kidnaps her daughter, and then at the end kind of realizes, it seems, you're left again to sort of make your own assessment of what their motives were, and what they're really intending, and what they really decided. And interestingly, there's a character, I've mentioned this before, there is a character who appears in every episode. Every episode, this guy is there somewhere, and except for 2 episodes, he's not in. This is one episode that he is not in, but he is. There's a place, a setting at the end at the train station that evidently they were going to put him there, but somehow they ran out of budget and they were unable to put his scene in there. He was supposed to be a worker at the train station. And you can kind of imagine, having seen the other episodes, you can imagine that he probably appeared on the scene and probably looked at the young woman just before she jumped on the train by herself and fled. Because this character seems to appear at moments when people are making decisions, making those ethical decisions. He's almost, people in reviews, other reviews I've read, they call him Christ-like, or like this ethereal figure who sort of shows up at these moments in your life. And to me, I get the impression from some of these episodes, when he shows up, I feel like he represents a feeling that is inherent in a lot of religions, where they say the God is watching you, that someone is there watching you and sort of judging you. And that's one of those things that a lot of religious thought includes. It's that sense that there is a consciousness out there somewhere, or up there, who is watching you and who is making a judgment of you and determining whether or not you're worthy to either go to heaven or some other reward. And it's sort of a tied in with the Ten Commandments and the sort of faith versus science types of questions, like, do you trust the math or do you trust your faith? And in this one, I kind of wish they had the budget just for that one shot of the guy at the train station, because that's where the younger woman in this story makes her sort of fateful decision to jump on the train and leave her daughter with her mother and father, where presumably they're just going to continue having their life, and the little girl's going to grow up and maybe have a weird memory of her sister for one day who said some weird things and took her to see a man. And interestingly, the man is a teddy bear maker. There's a lot of instances in this series where people have interesting careers, not just somebody who works at the tailor shop. I mean, there's a tailor in the series, but several of the people in the series have really interesting careers. Like this man that she goes to see, he makes teddy bears, and it's interesting because the little girl really is fascinated by his place, his house where he lives out in the country, and he's got all these teddy bears, and she falls asleep in a pile of teddy bears. It's very cute, and I think that's what makes him think, wow, it might not be so bad to have a daughter. And there's a lot of interesting questions in this episode about the ideas about how to deal with your life in terms of, if someone you feel, I mean, the resentments and things like that, but in terms of someone who's in control of your life, not doing it the way you want them to. The old, daughter versus parent, son versus parent, those dilemmas where the parent is wrong and you feel the kid feels like they're right. And in this one, there's that added dimension of motherhood, the feeling of motherhood, and this kind of overwhelming desire to, of this woman to raise her own daughter the way she thinks is proper. But it's an interesting episode. It's not exactly one of my favorite episodes. The cast is really good, of course. The way it's shot is beautiful. But it seems to me not to be not quite as heavy as some of the other episodes. I mean, it's quite good, and there is plenty to think about in here, and there are ethical questions and all those kind of things. But in this, they seem to be pretty clear in this one. It's fairly clear, and at the end of the episode, you feel like, well, that was an interesting choice that she made, but it was an ethical choice. I feel like maybe she had her experience there with her daughter and felt like, maybe I'm not right for this. You kind of think maybe that's what she determined, maybe that's her conclusion, and she felt like maybe my mom is better as a mom, and so she had her choice. Her moment was there, the train was there, and it's one of those situations where you've got a matter of seconds to make this choice, and she made her choice, and she got on the train, and she left her daughter with her mother, and who knows where she went. I think she was headed to Canada and or somewhere far away, and I think she probably felt like, I just can't handle this. I can't stand to live in that house anymore if she's going to raise the daughter wrong, or I can't handle the embarrassment of having been caught trying to steal my daughter, or the scandal that might come up about it. any of those issues. There's plenty to think about with this episode, but I just don't. It's not quite one of my favorites, but quite interesting. Dekalog 7. Thanks for joining me for this, and I will talk to you again real soon.